Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Standup Speakeasy. I am your host, Srethney, and every episode I bring a comic, or for this case, two comics out of Houston, Texas, and I'm glad they're on my show today, and I love their work and their shows, their episodes on their podcast, pretty awesome. It's called Breaking Down Bits. So welcome to the show, Drew and Brian. Welcome to the show, Drew and Brian.
Hey, Sareth. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Great stuff. So I'm so honored to. I love watching your episodes. I'm addicted to them, and hopefully it'll help you with your views and such. And so we'll start with Brian, and we'll alternate bios, and then we'll jump into all the formats of the show if you'd like. So Brian, you're an award-winning business community leader and stand-up comedian. What got you those three to form like Voltron, and to come together like that?
So the question is, what does all that mean?
Or like, how did you use those ingredients to formulate, to bring together all that stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I'm certainly somebody unique, at least to the Houston scene, that I do bring that business skill set and philanthropy skill set. So I run a philanthropy-based comedy show called Ha for Hope. And I've taken some of my experience in working with nonprofits and partner with nonprofits to help raise money telling dick jokes, as I like to say. So all that stuff has helped. It's helped me as a showrunner. It's helped me doing things like the podcast you mentioned, Breaking Down Bits, that Drew and I work on together, getting the word out and marketing that. So all that stuff comes into play. It's the business side of comedy that, let's face it, a lot of comedians just ain't that good at. And I've got some of those skill sets from my career.
Indeed, most definitely. I've been struggling about that for like the past 7 years now. But I'll probably take lessons from you, and you can teach me and all that good stuff, and we'll find out rates and all that stuff. So, and Drew, you grew up in rural East Texas, and I grew up in a small town in Colorado too, and so I knew what that's like. And what was it like growing up in rural East Texas?
I mean, for me, it was like just my dad's Baptist preacher, so super conservative. My whole life was kind of built around the religious church experience, and you knew everyone in the town. You went to Sonic to hang out. Like there was nothing to do, and it in a lot of ways, as the older I get, the more I appreciate when I go back home and hang out with the family and stuff. I appreciate being able to see the stars in the sky. That's cool. We go out to my grandpa's farm and do family get-togethers and stuff. So with the pond, we fish and shoot guns and do all this stuff. And I really appreciate that now. But I love the city, and I think all that brings, including like what comedy brought and the opportunities that Houston has offered, has been really great.
Indeed, most definitely. That's what I miss about Colorado, is like seeing the Big Dipper and stuff outside and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Sick those stars. And Brian, you produce a biannual charity comedy show called Ha for Hope, and we touched base a little bit on that, and you raised over 14,000 for children related causes. And what got you involved with Ha for Hope?
Yeah, so I started it, and I'll be honest, like when I first started it, it was my way of kind of getting stage time and being a showrunner. I was like, let me bring something unique to the comedy scene. Let me take some philanthropic stuff that I'm familiar with and know how to do. I've run events for a long time. Like I don't know if you know what a gala is, but it's a fundraising event that nonprofits do. I've been a chair for a gala, never do that again, but I did it and I learned a bunch from it. And I'm like, why can't I apply this to comedy? And so we did it, man. Booked it at one of the local comedy shows here in our comedy clubs in Houston called the Secret Group, which is probably the best venue as far as getting stage time for new comics or any comics at any level. And then it led me to being able to book it at the big club in town back in last March at the Houston Improv. It was so successful. And then we just continue to grow it. So yeah, I mean, it's just taking the skill sets of what I know and just trying to find my way into the scene and be somebody in the scene.
Awesome. And Drew, you mentioned that you were religious, born as a preacher's kid, and with a bowel disease in your bio. And so do you use that in your stand-up too?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my set is really just reflecting on the interesting dynamic that it was growing up. I think it was a pretty unique childhood. Being a preacher's kid is just such a unique situation. I think those biographical situations that we all have are just great wells to dig into for your comedy, because no one can steal that joke. It's personal. It's and it's really fun. I think I love to just kind of reflect on my upbringing and see how, like, oh, that was kind of weird, or I never thought about it that way, or looking back at how I grew up through my current point of view is really fun to me.
Absolutely, indeed. If I was born, like, my parents were religious too, but they were Buddhist, and so, but they didn't push their faith on me. They're like, whatever you find in life, go for it. So it's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I was all in. I was a youth pastor. I did church music. I worked in nonprofits. Like I was all in, and still work with a lot of nonprofits like that. And yeah, it's a cool experience. And I don't know. I think everyone should dig into that personal stuff. I love watching comics that do that, so I wanted to do it myself.
Indeed, I love that stuff too. Like, I'm not much of a topical humor guy. I just take all my flaws and throw it out there, and hopefully it sticks. And sure enough, it did. And now they call me the cleanest, dirtiest comic in Daytona Beach, because I say all these bad things and not a single curse word. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Indeed. And Brian, you performed on Houston, Boston, New York, Baltimore, New Orleans, and all over the state of Texas. And what are some of your favorite venues and memories from all those cities that you performed in?
Yeah, great question. So I guess it would be 2019 now. Last year just doesn't exist. I went back home and I booked some shows back east. I'm from New Hampshire. And so one of them was just like an open mic, and I did it in front of like way too much family. Never want to do that again. That was awful. It wasn't as bad as I thought. It was a lot of fun going back, hometown kid from, doing this anyway. So that was one. But the one that really stood out was Nick's Comedy Stop in Boston. Is just legendary. It's kind of a mess now. It's just like a nightclub after it starts as a comedy club, and it turns into like a booch like a dance club afterwards. And they don't turn the AC on or the heat on in there in the middle of the winter. It was cold and the crowd was tight, but like it's Nick's Comedy Stop. I mean, like Bill Burr and Rogan and all these guys. It's right down the corner from where the Comedy Connection was, and like Boston in like the 70s and early 80s was just such a hotbed for comedy. And it's all washed up now, but at least I got to be on that stage. So that was probably my favorite experience.
Awesome stuff. And so, Drew, you create awkward comedy, and that's like my favorite style of comedy. It's just like making it awkward and all that good stuff. And you share stories and you connect with them and all that stuff with more unique stuff. And how did you discover your voice in stand-up?
I really kind of started, the reason why it was so awkward at first is because I really kind of got the itch to do comedy, because I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is like Crohn's disease. And it was super embarrassing. And I was just so ashamed. And I would only talk about it to my closest friends. And the experiences that I was going through were pretty traumatic, but when I talked to it with my friends, I was able to put like a funny spin on it. And I realized that these stories were kind of funny. And I actually kind of found the humor in, just the ridiculous, just how exposed you are and how many people have put fingers up my butt over the years. And if you can't laugh at that, you're going to cry about it. And I just found a way to laugh at it. And it helped me just lose the embarrassment and shame of being someone who suffers with UC. And then I went through a divorce, which was also, coming from such a Christian background, traumatic, very something that's very looked down upon. And again, went through that process again. So I've just kind of turned the difficult, awkward experiences of life, and I just found a way to laugh at it in order to, I guess, to cope.
Indeed. And also, and Brian, you mentioned that you performed stand-up in front of a lot of your family members, and I performed in front of my parents, and I bombed in front of them. And they're like, we don't get it, but we'll support you 100%. And so, how did you discover your voice in comedy?
Well, I was already doing a lot of public speaking for a couple of years, so I had some pretty good speaking fundamentals. But you find very quickly that what you do in public speaking, motivational speaking, business type presentations, does not necessarily translate to comedy. Like I may have come off in the beginning a little too presentation style, and so it was a little bit of an adjustment. But I mean, I found my voice pretty quickly. I just you know, a lot of what Drew said, you know, dealing with the trauma of my life and trying to address those things. And I've only scratched the surface. So there's still so much more I can get into. And really, to Drew's point, so much more healing I can do. But just hitting on some of those points, and mostly in the beginning and where it's been so far is just I'm from New Hampshire, one of the least diverse places in America, and just processing being in Houston and being in one of the most diverse places in America. I mean, that alone can fill an hour. And so that's where a lot of my materials derive from. That and my children, which is easy, even my wife, which is easy stuff.
And you speak a lot about Houston, and I've never been. And what's it like performing stand-up in Houston? Like before, I know that some of the places are opened up now, but what's it like performing stand-up out there?
I'll start, Drew, and you can chime in if that's all right. So a lot of people will say that Houston and New York are very similar as far as the audiences, and LA and Austin, if we kind of look at some of the two markets here in Houston, and whatever, who cares about Dallas? But that's true. So the audiences in Houston, it's a commodity-driven city, and it's like it's oil and gas. There's either oil in the ground or there's not. It's healthcare, or you're either sick or you're not. It's just like, I'm going to sit back and cross my arms and you're going to make me laugh or you're not. And that, so they're tougher, they're tighter. But if you can crack them open, they'll be on your side and they're supportive. Whereas Austin, it seems like they'll give you a little bit more room to explore, to be more creative, to open up ideas and stories. And then one last thing I'll say about Houston, it's very divided. So we've got our liberal core, which is in the Beltway, not unlike a lot of cities are certainly concentrated liberal. But once you get outside the Beltway, it gets pretty right pretty fast. And so you have to change up, or you can change up your style for those types of audiences. I won't get too political and comment on some of that stuff, but there are some adjustments you can make going both directions in Houston, in and outside the Beltway.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's such a huge city, in such a major market, that there is every type, every circle, every social group, they're all represented somewhere in Houston. And so it's you can, in a sense, go on. There's comics who are Houston comics who go on tour in Houston and you can do, you can see all sorts of the suburbs, like Brian said, a little more conservative, family oriented kind of people in the city can be totally different. There's a Chinatown, there's a very strong arts community, there's a very strong gay community, there's a very strong, sports people, like everything's here. And so it is a kind of a neat opportunity to go up in front of a lot of different varied audiences. And so, yeah, and there's also a really strong, for lack of a better term, like the black comedy scene. It's semi-segregated and there's some crossover, but it's really fun to be able to work both sides of the house and learn a lot from working both kinds of rooms. That's very valuable, I think, for the future.
Indeed, it sounds a lot like Florida.
Yeah, for sure.
Indeed. And so you both co-host Breaking Down Bits, and how did you all join forces for Breaking Down Bits?
Yeah, I think honestly, like, it was kind of Brian was the brainchild on that one. I can't remember exactly how it came up, but it was definitely birthed out of COVID and not being able to workshop jokes with our friends and not getting the hang time. As Brian always says, we used to get that opportunity in green rooms. And I think, Brian, you just kind of reached out one day and said, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. Would you want to be a part of it? And I was like, that sounds awesome. And so we just kind of went for it out of nowhere. And Brian's very smart business wise and networking. And he was able to really land a bunch of great guests right off the bat. And it kind of we just loved it from the start doing it.
I mean, yeah, I think, well, we both were looking certainly those beginning, 5, I thought we both had our hand in the booking. But yeah, I mean, I can't remember how I discovered it. I was messing with somebody or doing something, but I discovered this way to make the Breaking Down Bits like logo thing, and or the Breaking Bad. You can adjust it and make these chemical symbols a part of whatever you're creating. And at some point, a light bulb came on. I was like, all right, Breaking Down Bits, it would be something I'd do. And Drew and I were in a group chat, and I threw it in there. I'm like, hey guys, I'm thinking about launching this contest or concept. And out of that group, I mean, Drew stood out obviously with his radio experience, somebody that and his joke writing abilities, as somebody that would be good. And I always want to clarify, like, we are not in this like pretending that we're joke experts by any stretch. We are along the ride that we are learning. We are students, and we're like, if we're here to learn from these pros, people will probably want to join us and learn along with us. And so I always want to be clear about that, because we don't ever want to put a stake in the ground and be like we're experts because we're like 2 years in.
Yeah. Also, we were huge fans of podcasts like Good One and Let's Talk About Sets, and they weren't putting out many episodes. And so we kind of saw an opportunity like, hey, if we love these podcasts, we love these conversations, if they're not going to be putting out episodes, let's do it ourselves.
Absolutely. And it took me a while because I was in the same boat with you all when I was in quarantine. And I'm like, man, I miss performing stand-up and talk with my friends off stage and everything. And that's how this whole stand-up speakeasy started. Because I was like, all right, I've interviewed like 600 comedians in Florida. I'll branch out and see who else I can reach out to. And started off in the Central Time Zone and just exploded. I'm like, all right, I'm like 90 episodes in already. And it's like back to back to back. And I'm booked into like the middle of March. It's like fantastic. And yeah. You've had some guests on the show which were pretty famous like now, and like I watched the Sam Talent one, which I loved, and because he's a fellow Colorado comic, and you've interviewed Mark Norman, John Reed, Jeff Dye, and Sarah Tiana. And what are your favorite memories from all those awesome comics that you've interviewed?
I think the most notable thing for me is literally Mark Norman took a dump during the podcast with us, like while recording live. We gave him a minute to wipe and clean up, but that was magical.
I think for me, I think the biggest moment was probably that, but then also Sarah Tiana's unaborted baby woke up in the middle of the show and joined us. Sorry. to put that in the worst way possible. He is absolutely adorable too, and he joined us. And then after that, and I bring this up, and Drew probably tries to forget it, but we had like a roast battle on air, and I beat him, but we were both terrible. But she was so nice. She's so nice.
That's awesome. I got to watch the Mark Norman. Trying to catch up. Indeed. And Drew, you have a new show, a YouTube series called New to Drew. And how did you come up with the concept of doing all the new stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm growing up, I was just a huge fan of Conan O'Brien, and he used to do a lot of stuff kind of like that. He would always go out and, be mixing it up with these experts in these different fields. He always kind of made himself the butt of the joke, like he does so well. And so I always had the idea. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm kind of an introvert. This could be a way that I could like do a little better job of networking. I could try new things just for my personal experience. And then why not document it and see what happens? And so the very first one, I got a buddy in Jacksonville, Florida, who does video full-time, video, photo, and all that kind of stuff. And one day I was just feeling overly extroverted and confident, which is very rare for me. And I hit him up and I booked the flight, and he taught me how to surf that week. And after that, it's just kind of, it's a way for me to get better at photo and video and storytelling. And I think the episodes are getting better and better. And I'm just having fun learning through the process, and it's making friends and getting better at photo and video. And I don't know, I love it. It's really fun.
That's awesome. Learning new things is like the best way to go with life. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. And Brian, you've won some awards that I've noticed, and you won were recognized as the 2008 Houston Business Journal 40 Under 40 and other community awards. You've also got 2019 Funniest Comic in Texas, and you were the semifinalist and winner of the 2019 Katy Comedy Contest. And what were those like? Getting all those all those awards and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I think you paid off the judges. I'm pretty sure you paid off the judges on one of those.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the community awards and the business awards and stuff is just going out and doing the right things in business and doing the right things in the community that we live in. Stuff I'm still very passionate about. I'm excited that I was talking about Ha for Hope, that I can bring some of that to comedy now and get those worlds intertwined. And then same with the show that Drew and I run. I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, and then the comedy contest stuff. I love this. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and he just hit me up right before the show. There's a comic in Houston called Steve Cantwell, and we were on a show at the secret group I mentioned earlier, and it was actually about to be my first paid show. I can't. What's like the real filthy one? Not filth, but Shocker.
Fresh.
No, Shocker.
Oh, Shocker.
Yeah. Shocker, where the audience knows they're gonna get like the dirtiest comedy, and I like filthied up all my jokes and stuff. He went after the show. They passed a thing around, and he went to hand me $6. This would be my first payment as a comedian. And I'm like, I don't even need that. Like, I thought they got paid more, and so I turned it down because I'm like, you keep it. I don't need $6. And then like the next day they had this comedy contest thing come out, and they're like, if you're an amateur, you have to be an amateur comedian, never been paid. And I'm like, look, I turned down payment, so I qualify. So, but I mean, at the same time, as a new comedian, I was still in the group of comics that competed in that. I mean, I was probably right in the median, or maybe even on the younger side of the comics. And but it was a pretty sheltered contest. Like, there wasn't like big hitters that were kind of turned away from entering. And then the FCIT, the funniest comic in Texas. Yes, I mean, I certainly stacked the deck. It's literally a bringer show, and it's what it is. It's audience vote, and so yeah, you get as many of your friends to come out, and I got a bunch of them to come out and brought it and won the regional thing, and then lost in the finals because somebody else stacked the deck heavier against me. That's it.
Indeed, all those bringer competitions. I've been in a couple of those, and oh man, those are rough. I hardly knew anybody in those cities, and I'd lose every time. But we're raising funds for HaHa for Hopes. And what made you pick HaHa for Hopes to raise funds for this episode?
So I mean, that's the charity that I started it. It's right now, every year we pick a different charity to partner with. It's children-focused charities. It's where I've always invested my time, because in part of it, I won't get into the details, but I felt like a lot of my childhood was taken away. So, it's sort of personal mission that I have to give children the best lives possible. I was like, if you impact a child's life, like the trajectory of impact on that kid's life is greater than somebody who's older in age. It just is, right? So anyway, so the group that we're working with right now is Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Houston. It's a mentor volunteer program. They have a big gap in funding, like all nonprofits do right now because of the pandemic, but also a big gap in mentors. They're like 200, 300 kids right now that need mentors that can't get them. There's just not enough of them. So our objective is not just to raise money, Sarath, it's also to raise awareness for mentorship in these programs. So we have a $20,000 pledge that I put together. It was for last year. Because our show got canceled because of the pandemic, we moved the pledge forward to this year. Same partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I also propped up a little holiday show, which we raised $2,000. So we're a little bit ahead in our pledge, but we still got 18 more. And I'm hoping that in October, we will have the actual show at the Big Brothers Big Sisters Houston location. Absolutely beautiful, overlooking downtown. We're gonna bring in a New York comic and really blow it up. So if you want to donate to that, that'll just help us get towards that pledge, help us with our cause about raising money for this great organization and helping us spread awareness.
Indeed, most definitely. And how did you get involved with the Riot, Houston, Texas, in Houston, Texas?
I created it, so there's that.
That was his way in mostly.
Yeah, I'm an ideator, man. I start things, and where I get stuck, and I like to start new things. And so now Drew's with me as a partner on the show. He wasn't the original partner on it, and there's been a little transition. Somebody that's moving out of the city, so I needed somebody that wanted to work with me and grow the thing. But Drew is. I'm excited he's joining me on it because he does a lot of things I don't do well, right? So once we start getting into the process and like doing things repeatedly, he's got a lot of things there that brings a lot of great insight from his background in radio. But also, he talked about earlier, he's a visual storyteller with the video and audio and photography that he can bring, and just having an ear for sound, being a musician and working in radio, helping me with the sound stuff that like I get like this whenever I have to touch that soundboard. I'm getting better, but anyway, so yeah, how did I get involved? I started it, I branded it, and it is kicking ass. Like that show is so good right now, and it's continuing to get good. We're continuing to book great guests, and the worlds are starting to collide where we're able to book Breaking Down Bits guests onto the Riot, because we have Ian Lara in next week, which is going to be such a good show.
Awesome. Can't wait for that. I love your show on breaking down bits, and I love like the intros and everything like that, and like that you do, and like it's just rad. I dig it. You guys do an excellent job. And for this sec portion of the show is the questions I wanted to ask you both, and because I was hoping to go on tour, but the pandemic hit. So with that being said, Drew and Brian, what inspired you to perform stand-up comedy?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I think it was kind of I've always been a fan of it, and then when I was going through all the stuff I was going through, I just started a notebook and I just started writing down jokes, and I moved to Nashville. I lived there for a few years, and I was just really kind of getting the itch to. When I worked in my previous radio job before that, it's a very creative job. When I moved to Nashville, I was running more operations for this radio station, so I had a little less say in the creativity. So I wanted to find some way to scratch that itch. So I took the Rick Roberts class there in Nashville. And that was a wonderful experience. Got a little confidence, had a few jokes, learned some mechanics. And I did my very first open mic there at on Music Row. Bobby's Idle Hour was my very first open mic, and it went okay, and I was hooked.
Awesome. And for yourself, Brian?
Man, I want to clean this story up because there's a couple moving parts to it. But just like Drew, I mean, I was a fan back in the day. You know, seeing Eddie Murphy Raw was just like, or I'm sorry, not Raw, Delirious. I think Raw's weak. I think Delirious is very strong. Raw was just like, hey, look what I did on Delirious. Y'all like that? Yeah. Anyway, but Delirious is hilarious. I know I can still today recite all those jokes. And at that time, the 18, 19-year-old Eddie, it made it feel like you had to be a natural talent and you had to be like a rock star. Like comes out wearing this red suit and stuff. So that it just made comedy feel really inaccessible. And then this show came out called Last Comic Standing on NBC, and it was just people off the street. You know, they're open micers. I guess almost all of them, right? People just like what we do now, that were lining up and getting on national TV and then going on to win these contests. People we've had on the show. You know, Jeff Dye was on that show, and a bunch of people that we've had on. And anyway, so that was like, oh, okay, this is more accessible. And I came really, really close to doing it back then, like 2000, when I was 25 years old, which I had nothing to talk about. I didn't have any life, anything yet. It was gonna suck. So I'm glad I didn't. Maybe it would have been good. Maybe I don't know. But it was for a company event, and they had the stand-up competition, so it would have had to been clean. And I was drawing blanks, and I eventually just backed out. I put in my 2-week notice and just left the state. That is actually what happened, but that's like literally the timeline, but not because I had to do stand-up, just because I was already in transition. I could have still done the contest and nobody would have cared, but like that was my excuse, right? So, sorry, I'm going on. But then I was dormant for 10 years, and what happened is there's a local comic. His name is Grady Pruitt. He's an absolute murderer. And he was but when I met him, he was just a kid. He's like in middle school, and he was like helping me run events. I've always run events in my career, and he would just help me like pick up the chairs and clean up stuff and whatever we needed Grady to do. And then he went to like college, and his dad's like, "Hey, you never believe this." His dad's the CEO at my company. That's how we knew each other. He's like, "You never believe this, but Grady is into stand-up comedy. He's getting good." And I'm like, "Wait, okay." I didn't even know there was local stand-up. I had no clue. A mic had never sprouted up in a bar I was in or anything crazy like that. Just didn't even know it existed. And he's like, he performs regularly at Rudyard's. I'm like, shit, Rudyard's is a 5-minute walk from my house. I'm gonna go check out Grady. Then he won a contest. He won like the funniest comic in Houston contest. I'm like, oh, okay. If little middle school Grady can do this, I can do it. And then just the last piece is I was playing a lot of golf, and golf sucked. Like Drew was talking about, was the new Drew golf thing. I wasn't getting any better, and I was spending a ton of money, and I was investing a ton of time during the day, which is time that could have been spent with my family, my kids, my time spent at work. I was just sacrificing the time, and I'm like, maybe I could try something in the evening time, or I can actually notice how I'm getting good, get paid for it, just all the right. So I threw in my golf clubs and traded in my hobby from golf to stand-up comedy. There's more to it, but that's the long, short version of it.
Indeed. And you spoke of Eddie Murphy earlier, and what are your favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums?
Oh,
Andrew, if you want.
Me, I'll go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a massive Norm Macdonald fan. I mean, you name it, Norm standing up, whatever. All of his specials I just love, and of course, like all the Mitch Hedberg stuff. I originally started like writing one-liners. It's what I love. So like Mitch All Together or whatever. All those specials from Mitch and Norm were just super super powerful to me. Even Brian Regan was one of my early kind of things. And I was like, oh wow, this guy does something that was like a challenge, I guess, because I'm very much not. I'm more like, I guess, not to like stylistically, not talent wise, more like a Norm or a Mitch. But Brian Regan and his storytelling was something I aspire to. So those guys were pretty big for me, especially when I first launched into trying comedy.
Indeed. I love Norman Dirty Work. That's like one of my favorite movies.
That's one of my favorite movies. I got it on DVD right over here.
Absolutely. Like I love Chris Farley and his lady in the movie.
Yeah. Saigon whore.
Absolutely. And Brian, what are your favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Delirious is my very first break into comedy. But some of the ones, and I hate to say this, but it's just true. I can't, because he's jerking off in front of girls during this period of time. But like Louis C.K. Chewed Up and Hilarious, and all of his like 2000s work is late 2000s is just so inspirational for me and where my comedy comes from. And then more recently, stuff like Nate Bargatze's Tennessee Kid. So good. His new one comes out March 19th. I'm gonna be up at midnight waiting for that to roll on Netflix. I love Nate. And anything Bill Burr. I love Brian Regan's last special. The one he did at Red Rocks just came out last week on Netflix. So really, I'm really in this mode now where I'm always looking for and exploring for new specials, and it's stuff that we can do. A lot of times it's an opportunity for Drew and I to reach out to these comics on Breaking Down Bits to help them get exposure for their work. And so, yeah, I'm really, for the first time, really forward looking in how I'm exploring comedy more than ever.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And of course, lately you can't have the conversation without throwing in like Sam Morrill, Mark Norman, and Joe List with their YouTube specials. Just fire.
Yeah, Out to Lunch. Mark Norman was great. Sam Morrill's, the last two, the rooftop one, all that stuff.
Most definitely. I wish I had Netflix so I can see Bill Burr at Red Rocks. I've been there a couple times. But yeah, I'm one of those people that doesn't have a single stream service. So.
You don't have a single friend that has a password? I mean, like, you don't need to pay for it.
Date a girl for a couple of weeks or something.
I'll change my username to my password. You can just have
it. Indeed. Awesome. I've been there a couple times to see some shows. Like the last one was Wu-Tang on Halloween night, and it was amazing. It was fantastic.
Red Rocks is magical. There's something so special about just seeing a concert there. It feels so special.
Indeed, I miss it. I can't wait to move back and go catch more shows there. And a couple of those folks have been on TV and film, as we talked about Dirty Work and stuff earlier. And what are your favorite sitcom sketch shows and comedy films?
Oh man, this is a weird one, but I am a ultra super nerd for news radio. It was this weird ensemble from the 90s. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but like Phil Hartman, Andy Dick, Joe Rogan, Foley. Tia Leon. I mean, it's just like, it's ridiculous cast, so funny. I kind of, this is sad, I almost watch it every night. I put it on to sleep. That's what I love. And I was a huge Seinfeld fan too, really big on Seinfeld. Seinfeld's way better than Friends, if anyone asks. Those were the ones those are the big ones for me growing up, for sure.
Indian sketch shows for Drew?
I mean, SNL always. I used to because my parents were still conservative, I definitely was not allowed to watch SNL. So this is how old I am. You could put a VHS in the tape machine and record the TV, and I would put a blanket over the TV because you couldn't turn it off, So I put a blanket over the TV. I would record SNL on Saturday nights, and then the next day I would watch the episode.
That's awesome. I used to do that with pro wrestling shows and stuff. and also your favorite comedy films?
Oh, I mean, Dumb and Dumber, one of the best of all times. As a 13, 14-year-old boy, I was peeing my pants constantly about that. There's so many. Gosh, it's hard to name. But Dumb and Dumber always, I think, it has a special place in my heart. It was something awesome for me.
Indeed. I love Dumb and Dumber too. And for Brian, your favorite sitcom sketches and comedy films?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up a huge Simpsons fan. I remember we didn't have cable growing up. We had like a big rusty antenna, and from New Hampshire, we would try to get like Boston stations, but it would always be like snowy. But I would, and like sometimes depending on the weather or whatever, I don't know what makes it shitty or not, but like whatever would cause the reception to go in and out, I would just have hours and hours, tapes and tapes of just really bad reception Simpson videos, and then I also tried to like delete the commercials, so I would stop it and then start it again when that move. So I mean, I mean seriously, I went back to my parents' house. They're about to sell their house. I'm sure they have like 10 tapes of just snowy Simpsons, seasons 1 through 8, which are season 3 through 6, 3 through 8 are just so good. Seinfeld, yeah, like Drew mentioned, I grew up on Seinfeld. I don't know recently. I like what's the one that won like swept in the awards on Netflix? Schitt's Creek. I like it. It's funny. But I'm not invested in it. So I don't know about new shows. But as far as what was the next one? Oh, Sketch. All right, good. I thought of a deep cut while Drew was talking. The State on MTV. Anybody you familiar with The State? If you are, go back and look at that. Another one on MTV, Human Giant. Another great one. Sketch comedy show. One of my favorite skits of all time. I'm about to cut my dick off. It's great. Watch that if you haven't. Or it's called Viral Videos. That's what it's called. Go watch that. It's so good. Aziz Ansari, Paul Schaefer, and I can't remember the other guy. And then SNL, of course. I'm still a avid watcher of SNL. Movies. My favorite comedic movie. Actually, they just put it out on Netflix. I watched it again for the first time in like 20 years. Is maybe 15 years. Tommy Boy. Absolutely love that movie. I'm just gonna leave it at Tommy Boy.
Indeed, that's my number one favorite comedy flick too. Yeah. It's like so fantastic. And let's see here. It's just so many quotes in that movie. Both Dumb and Dumber and Tommy Boy, they both have fantastic quotes. They're ageless too. And let's see here. If you can go on tour with any comedian other than the both of you together, which comedians internationally and locally would you like to go on tour with?
Oh gosh, Brian, you want to go first? I feel like
I'm gonna say Will Loden locally here in Houston. He's just always willing to workshop jokes, always super funny, finds a way to be professional when he needs to be. And so Will Loden in Houston. And then nationally, internationally, I mean, I already mentioned it. Nate Bargatze would be my guy. He's so hot. He's at the hot point of his career, and he seems like a chill dude. And that would be a lot of fun.
Indeed.
Oh man, for me locally, like I've been working with a guy named Jeff Joe a lot here in town. Just a hilarious killer who's actually got his first headlining gig at the Improv Houston this week. So that's awesome. Shout out to him. And I think nationally, this is kind of a weird cut, but Pete Holmes and me have such a similar story. I feel like our audiences would jive, and I feel like I could be a good opener for Pete Holmes.
Indeed, I love both of them. Like, I love Pete in Crashing, and I love Nate with his stand-up because Nate's like very cool, calm, and collected on stage, and he doesn't have to shout, and that's the way that I am too. It's like, but he gets all his punchlines and all that stuff across, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, his timing is so unique and understated magically.
Most definitely. And let's see here. If you can get roasted by 5 comedians, past and present, which comedians would you like to get roasted by?
Roasted.
Well, let's throw in Jeff Ross just because he's the roast master general.
Sure.
Who's the guy that always does the? This is really hard. 5 is a lot, man. Jeselnik, because he always does the roast battles, and I love his delivery. He's so good. Nikki Glazer. You got every you have to book a female every lineup. She's sort of the best at it. Let's see, 5, dude. Victor Tran, who's a Houston local, one of the best at it, and Zod Devji, another Houston local, one of the best at it.
Absolutely.
I like that list. I would only add I'd bring back Patrice because I think he would just brutalize me so terribly. And I would throw Sarah Tiana on there because she is the queen of all the roasts.
Indeed, most definitely. And let's see here. Where do you see your comedy journey in the next 5 years?
Just headlining road tour. Like my thing, the pandemic's really brought out something interesting in me. And I think it's my love for video. YouTube and stuff like that. So my goals are, to definitely keep growing in stand up, but also make sure that I'm pivoting and growing YouTube and sketches. I'm starting to shoot some sketches. I want to start writing more sketches. I just want to grow, not just in one specific area. I want to continue to grow my stand up, but I also want to do all the YouTube and the video stuff. It's super fun, and I get almost just as much joy out of sharing my point of view and my story through YouTube as I do on stage live.
Indeed. And Brian?
Yeah, so I've thought about this quite a bit. In fact, if you breaking down bits, a great episode people enjoy is Ron G, where he asks you to think about your comedy legacy. Really powerful stuff for me, and started shaping some of my ideas. Because when you start this, you don't have any idea. You don't know. You're just trying to get to 5 minutes without embarrassing yourself. And then the next thing you know, you're doing 10-minute sets, and then people are like, "Hey, can you do 15, 20?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure." And now you're just in it. I think I've now decided I'm not interested in ever becoming a headliner. I think inevitably I'll have a headliner's worth of material, maybe in a year or two. I'm not saying that's good for anybody, but that'll be the amount of material that I can do. If
to his family at home when
yeah, it wouldn't. Yeah, no, don't book. But I don't want to. I don't desire to be booked as a headliner and tour the country. I can't. Family and things that I care about and that I value too much here in Houston. So this is where I'll be. So that said, I found I do enjoy stand up, and I'll continue to do that. I've set my sights for somebody like Bud Friedman. I don't know if you know who that is, but Bud Friedman founded the improvisation back in New York, and then again in LA, and then franchised out across the country, all the improvs. And Bud had a TV show in the late 80s and 90s called Live at the Improv, or Night at the Improv, excuse me. And like they did like 500 episodes, and it's all like the people you remember from back in the day, like Louis C.K. It's on that, and Norm Macdonald, and like they all did it multiple times. But Bud would come out and do some jokes. He had a stupid monocle, so I'm gonna get the monocle, and he would do like these cheesy jokes to kick it off. Like he would be the host of the. And so I like that. I like being the host. That's something I enjoy. I don't always have to do it. And then I also get my, I'm firing off endorphins on building a comedy show that people want to come to. That's where I've learned. I used to be on stage getting laughs. I mean, it still is, but I've found it similarly in, hey, I sold a ticket. That feels good. Like just somebody wants to come see what we're putting together. And so yeah, I think I'll always do comedy. I never really care to take it for a touring headliner or anything like that. I won't turn Netflix down if they're coming for a special, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. But I do think I've got a lot of value in the production side, and I know that I bring a lot of value in leadership and to the Houston scene. So whether that's working with existing venues or maybe establishing my own venue at some point, that is something that is in my near future.
Awesome. Excellent answer. And which other forms of comedy would you venture off into, like improv, sketch, comedy writing, acting, directing, etc.?
Oh, definitely writing and directing and stuff for me. Like I said, all the video stuff is really, I'm excited. I'm actually, this next month, I booked a weird unpaid gig with one of my buddies being a grip on a music video shoot. Cause I just I'm so interested. One of my things as a kid, I wanted to do movie special effects. That was like my 12-year-old passion. So the movie writing, directing, I feel like, not that I have some sort of incredible gift, but I feel like I have a point of view on how things should look and how they should put together. And it's a fun puzzle. So yeah, I'm all into that for sure for me.
Absolutely. And for you, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just hit on it, but that is the producer, and I just have, to Drew's point, I've got an eye for it. I'm good at it. Like I see the shows through the eyes of the audience, through the audience experience, and it just seems, at least in our market, just seems like that's not considered as much as it should be, in my opinion. And if you make that consideration, man, it just gives you a better show. The audience will respond better. They'll be more relaxed, and so. I love playing in that space of finding out how we can make those experiences better and better and better. And I feel bad for Drew because he's partnered with me on the Riot. And I just came up with another idea. He just has to get all these ideas that are coming out of my head to make these things better. But that's what I'm working on, man. That's what I care about. I know I'm not as good of a writer as Drew or a lot of the comics out there. they lift me up. I've got some performance stuff that kind of carries me a little bit, and I got some jokes, but yeah, I'm getting more behind the scenes, and I like to do a little bit of acting. I did a little bit of that last year, did some commercial work.
And look at the look on.
Yeah, I got the look for it. So I'm trying to get more acting gigs. There's just no industry here in Houston. So.
Indeed. And from what I've seen on Breaking Down Bits, you guys are like the perfect dynamic duo, like Batman and Robin. It's pretty rad. So it's pretty rad.
I feel like I just got called Robin right there.
You're definitely Robin.
No,
Robin.
Hey, here's the thing. I love partnering with Brian. We are the yin and yang kind of to each other. We both have skills that each other, we're both strong in places that the other's not so strong. And it's been so awesome to do the Breaking Down Bits and now taking this on to the Riot and our live show. We're getting to both travel and open for Ian Lara next weekend in Lafayette, and then back at the Riot in Houston. And so I encourage anyone, like, you need to find a good partner. And sometimes that means finding someone who balances you out and brings something to the table that so you don't have to lean into something that's not your strength. And it's just been a great partnership. Hopefully Brian agrees.
Yeah. And then, even like his solo work, like New to Drew, is stuff that I like to help out with and get involved in. It's opened doors for us, like in the Austin scene. Like we rolled this out where we were like, hey, somebody who liked Breaking Down Bits. I work with her to get him a scene he could shoot in Austin for the CrossFit episode. Went out there, and then we also got booked on her show and had a great time. So I mean, I guess to Drew's point, not only just find people, one person or a group of people that complement you and you can work together to grow. But also recognize that these things all intertwine and can help you in different ways. So take on a lot of different projects and figure out how they connect and how you can grow through them.
Yeah, it's really about finding someone that has a similar vision. I think, you can work with a lot of people, but you just gotta have the same kind of vision and goal. And I love collaborating. Like I didn't think you could collaborate in comedy when I started. I thought it was a solo game and you weren't supposed to ask anyone for help. And no one was supposed to give you any tags or help you at all. And I'm so thankful that there is a lot of opportunity for really fun collaboration in comedy.
Indeed. And so true with what you said, Drew, is like how you got to find someone that balances you out. Like my best friend, he balances me out, and like I'm a Capricorn, he's a Virgo, and so we're both earth signs. And like where I'm strong, he's weak, and vice versa. And he's like my Batman and Robin. So I'm more the Robin, so he's more Batman. Yeah.
Robin strong, bro.
Absolutely. And what's your favorite joke a comic has written?
Oh, mine's local, and I always because it happens all the time. Somebody asks you, "Hey, tell me a joke." Oh, you're a comedian? Tell me a joke. So I say, "This isn't my joke. This is a joke written by Zad Devji. He's a local comic I already talked about. He's on my roast panel." And his joke goes, I just downloaded one of those. I'm always drinking and driving, so I just downloaded one of those new apps that stops you from drinking and driving. Yeah, it's called Netflix. Or texting and driving. Did I say drinking and driving? I meant texting and driving.
Indeed.
Did I screw up his joke? Sorry, Dev. Sorry, Zod. Texting and driving. I tell it right when I'm in. Okay,
anyway. And Drew.
Yeah. I feel like, I'm so on the spot right now, and I'm going to fail miserably because, probably something from Mitch. One of his, maybe the first joke I remember from Mitch was like when someone hands me a flyer, it's like they're saying, "Here, you throw this away." And I think I heard that, and I was like, and I worked in radio promo forever, so my whole life was handing out flyers to people to throw away, I guess. But yeah, there's so many. We'd sit here all day and I would just keep rattling off ones that might be, Yeah,
there's the Mitch plug and play. Like I used to do drugs. I still do drugs too, but I used to as well, or I used to too. God, I can't get these right.
Yeah, and the Norm. I love the Norm stuff on Standing Up, where he's like, they say when you die, you go to a better place, but his dad died. He had a heart attack, and he's like, you say he's in a better place. He's on the floor. Used to be on the bed. Like Norm. Gosh, so good.
Indeed. And what experience would you like to the audience to take with them after a set is over?
I think for me, like because comedy was so healing for me, I want people to have just a time away, just an escape. I want them to feel like the weird, difficult painful things that they've gone through. Don't have to stop them. I want them to maybe, like, best case scenario, they walk away and they go, you know what? I'm going to get through XYZ bad thing. I can find humor in it. And maybe they're inspired like I was to just take a different point of view on that hard stuff that happens in life and just try to use, there's a quote that I keep on my desk. It just says humor eases shame. And that's always been a thing for me.
Indeed. And for you, Brian, what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
That's true. You made that hard. That was really good. Okay, so let's do it from the show perspective. I mean, from a I'll just take it because his is so spot on for what you want from emotionally. Let me talk about the business side of things. I want them to like and follow and share their experience digitally as much as possible. And Drew and I are thinking, like, how do we make this happen? How do we create this within our shows? Not in an organic way. We don't want to force it in a weird way. So share the experience, leave us reviews, and do all the things that helps get the word out digitally. But more importantly, that they had such a good time that they just can't wait to get and share it with their friends. They'll at brunch on Sunday, hey, we did this last night. Y'all should check it out. They're there every Saturday night, that kind of stuff. And so I just want them to be have had such a good time, and we're able to escape from life, to Drew's point, or escape from whatever trauma or whatever's happening in their life at that moment, and get away from it and enjoy it through comedy and heal through comedy, but also to tell a friend or and continue to spread local comedy and comedy in general.
Most definitely. And I wanted to point out that if you hear my nephew in the background, it sounds like Jurassic Park. He's here from Colorado visiting, so he's like a year or two old, so don't mind him. I tried to put like so many things to like silence the room, but oh well, he'll be gone on Wednesday and back to Colorado. So, we're on the Standup Speakeasy. It's like the Prohibition, the Roaring 20s, and it's you got to know someone to be on the show, and so that's the whole theme here. And with that being said, Drew and Brian, which comics out of Houston would you like to see on the future episodes of the Standup Speakeasy?
I think I'm going to call an audible here. Me and Brian brainstormed very quickly. I'm going to shout out, because he's got a great podcast in town. Jamal Rahal, Covered All with Jamal Rahal. Great podcast, guys. Super fun conversationalist. A very up-and-coming comic in Houston. I think he would be an awesome guy to talk to.
Fantastic. And Brian?
I've got a guy here in Houston who is just such a local podcast fan. He runs his own podcast called No Country for Middle-Aged Men. He mentioned me. I listened to his podcast today because I'm laid up. I've got a really bad pulled muscle, badly bruised pulled muscle. So I'm literally, I just popped out of bed. I'm going right back to bed after this. So I listened to his whole podcast. I never do that. I don't care to. But
you're roasting him as you're nominating him.
This is a nomination / roast. But he talked about him and Nathaniel Amador, another great Houston comic, talked about me for like 2 minutes, and they all had nice things to say. And so, yeah, his name is Adam Radliff, not Radcliffe, Radliff, and Adam Radliff.
Awesome. I'll be sure to reach out to those fine folks and have them on the show. And for this episode, I wanted to remind everyone that we're raising funds for Haha for Hopes, and breakingdownbits.com is scrolling on the bottom. The Riot HTX.com scrolling on the bottom. The Brian Gendron, I believe. I don't want to butcher your last name. That's how I pronounce it, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yep.
Awesome. Fantastic.com. And because we just met each other on first name basis, but I'm glad I nailed it. And you go to youtube.com/Drew is Talkward as well. And all of Drew and Brian's information's in the description box below, from wherever you get your podcasts, from Pandora to Apple to all that stuff. And they're all in tiny URLs because I didn't want to put all those letters and numbers in there, but they're all there. And so definitely subscribe and donate to Haha for Hopes and all that good stuff. So with that being said, Drew and Brian, are there any final words you'd like to give out to the audience at home?
I've been watching a lot of MXC lately, so I want to say, don't get eliminated.
Indeed.
But the real thing to say is what Brian's going to say next.
I was just gonna say, like, find to Drew's point, find your tribe, and we can offer up at least our breaking down bits open mic if you are a working comic and you want to come to our feedback mic on Tuesday nights. It's 9 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday nights. Just email us up, breakingdownbits@gmail.com. And it's a really safe, creative space to work on joke writing, work on tags, do a 5-minute set, get feedbacks from some pretty cool comics, some pretty advanced comics from around the world. And that's just one way of many. But keep working on your comedy. There's the work aspect of it, and just keep doing it, and it'll pay off.
Yeah, and if you happen to make your way through Houston, make sure you do come by and check out the Riot. Man, we put a lot of hard work on that show, Brian, a lot more than me because I just came on as a partner. But it's a really fun show, booking some great comics, a wonderful experience. Would love for more people to swing through and experience kind of what we're putting together there, because we really do think the Houston comedy scene, we want to grow it. We want to do some fun stuff that maybe hasn't been done before, and we'd love to invite anyone in the Houston area to swing through and catch one of those shows.
Absolutely. And I know Drew is coming to Jacksonville tonight, and so I don't want you to miss your flight, but I'll email you all the open mics in town and all that good stuff, and the ones that are going on. There's like one per night, so for a couple of days. So.
Bring your stickers, Drew.
Yeah, I will. We're going to Jacksonville. We're going to shoot New to Drew golf. We're going to see how that goes.
Awesome. Fantastic. And thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show today. It means the world to me. And I'll piece it all together, throw it on my website, and you can share it and all that good stuff. And for everyone else at home, be safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Stand-Up Speakeasy. And we'll see